Hello, good afternoon, sir. Are you hearing me, Solanki, sir?
Yes. Good
Can we?
afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. If you permit us, can we start, sir?
Yes, we can start.
Just 1 minute, sir. Miss Munira, you may start the introduction of sir, please.
Okay, sir. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second session of the day. In this session, Professor C.H. Solanki sir will deliver his expert lecture on soil investigation for foundation of structures. Dr. Solanki sir is a big name in the geotechnical field. Let me brief you about him. Professor Chandresh Solanki sir is senior professor in the civil engineering department at Sardar Vallabhbhai National Institute of Technology, Gujarat, and faculty member since 16th August 1991. Sir has guided more than 57 postgraduate dissertations and 20 PhD scholars. He is the present research supervisor of 7 ongoing PhD research scholars. Sir has published more than 180 research papers in reputed international and national journals and conferences. Sir has received the Shri M.S. Jain Biennial Award for Best Paper in IGC 2013, Professor Dinesh Mohan Award in IGC 2017, and the Distinguished Faculty Award for the Venus International Faculty Awards 2016. Sir has also received many Best Paper awards in many conferences. Professor Solanki sir has organized more than 20 national level events including STTPs, FDPs, conferences and seminars. He was the chairman of the Indian Geotechnical Conference 2019 Surat. Sir has been elected as member of Executive Committee IGS for the 3 terms. Sir worked as the Dean and Head of the Department at SVNIT Surat. Sir has published 9 books and edited proceedings. He has 30 years of teaching experience for undergraduate and postgraduate students. Now, without wasting any further time, I would like to invite a dynamic personality, Professor Dr. C.H. Solanki sir, to deliver the talk. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Munira. And I am thankful to, may I audible to you?
Completely audible, sir. Perfectly audible.
I am thankful to Professor K.B. Parikh, Dr. Yogendra Tandel and their team for inviting me to meet you all participants here. This is the second program organized by Atal program organized by Professor Parikh and his team. I congratulate them also because very few institutes are being selected for this Atal program, and out of there your name of the Government Engineering College, Dawood, is there in it. So I congratulate the faculty members of this institute, and I also thank for the kind and elaborate introduction which has been prepared by your team. Thank you. May I share the slides?
Definitely, sir.
Can you see my PPT here?
Completely visible. Perfectly visible.
Thank you very much. So I expect that I am audible to you as well as my screens are also very clear with you. Hence, I am starting my presentation here. My topic of the presentation is soil investigations for foundation of structures, as this event is a joint venture of the geotechnical and structural engineers. I have decided to talk on this topic of the soil investigations for foundations of structures. You know that the geotechnical investigation program should be such that it can be ascertained that the foundation system is safe against shear failure of soil. Excessive settlement of the soil should not have to be occurred, and liquefaction susceptibility should have to be known to us. So these are the most important points for the foundation design whenever we are going. Soil should have to be safe in shear, It does indicate that the shear strength of the soil should have to be more than the shear stress on the soil. We have studied the factor of safety also in respect to the shear strength upon stress applied on the soil. So soil should be safe in shear. You are familiar with the shear parameters of the soil, such as the cohesion and angle of internal friction. You know the various tests to be performed for the shear parameters, such as the box shear test or the direct shear test, triaxial test, Van shear test, and unconfined test, and its utility or significance of the test when it is to be performed. Our Indian Standard Code defines the permissible limits for the different types of the foundations and foundations resting on the different soil. In view of that, we are supposed to know what are the permissible limits for the different foundations and soils which has been given in the IS codes. While going for the design, this has to be known to us. It does mean that in case of the isolated footing, the whatever settlement is being permissible, it is less in compared to the rough foundations. Similarly, in clay soil, the allowable settlement is more in compared to the sandy soil. Liquefaction susceptibility is to be known to us, hence we can take care of the liquefaction of the soil if it is about to occur. So these are the three important points which are supposed to be known by all the geotechnical engineers as well as all the structural engineers. Am I audible to you clearly?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, fine. Okay. Now I'm come to the next second slide. Whenever civil engineers are going for any project, they need to go for the geotechnical project sequences. These project sequences are site research, field reconnaissance, field exploration, laboratory investigations, geotechnical interpretations, analysis, and report of the exploration. Most of you are familiar with this methodology of the soil explorations. First, the engineers need to visit the site. They need to perform the experiments in the field. They need to collect the samples. They perform the experiments in the laboratory. The results obtained from the laboratory as well as field are to be correlated, and based on that, the final report of the geotechnical investigation has to be prepared. Whenever we are going for the soil investigations, we should have some common objectives for the same. Why we are going for the soil investigations and what are the reasons behind that. So we need to identify and describe the pertinent surface conditions. What is the soil strata that we need to know on the top surface, as well as to determine the location and thickness of the soil and rock strata. We are supposed to go for knowing the soil profiles, determining the location of the groundwater table, recover the samples for laboratory testing, conducting the laboratory and field testing, and identify the special problems and concerns. Many of you maybe have come across this point while going for designing the foundations. If you are getting your foundations of weak deposits, in such cases you need to apply some ground improvement techniques. I have seen the schedule that some of the speaker might have discussed on the ground improvement techniques. What are the different techniques and in which situations these techniques are to be applied? Geotechnical investigation would consist of what? Geotechnical investigation consists of number of test bores. It consists of the depth of the test bores. What are the field tests to be carried out at the site depending on the site situations? The laboratory tests to be conducted in the laboratory and correlations of the field and laboratory test data for determination of the safe bearing capacity. Here I would like to ask one of these questions to the participants here. Can you elaborate something on what are the correlations between the field and laboratory test and how the geotechnical engineers decide the same? My question to you is that how will you correlate the field and laboratory testing as far as the soil investigation is concerned. Please, one of the participants may answer if possible.
Participant can write down the chat box. They can interact. Otherwise, they can mute themselves.
Okay, if participants are mute, I may not ask Dr. Yogendra. It's okay for
Yes,
me
Okay.
because I may not be able to see the chat box here because I'm working from iPad, so it may be
Okay.
difficult to go back once again. Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
no problem. Whenever the soil investigation has to be decided, one has to be known that how many borings you have to go for and how deep you will have to go for. This is the one of the important point in the soil investigations. How will you decide the number of borings? Decision of the number of borings is applicable to all the civil engineers for their projects. Even if he is a hydraulic engineer or water or transportation engineer or structural engineer or geotechnical engineer, they need to know how many borings they will have to go for. Similarly, they will go for deep for the explorations. It is also being needed for them, and so some of the basic fundamentals would have to be known to them for deciding the number of borings and depth of the exploration. However, in the book of the Braja M. Das, it has been written that no hard and fast rule exists for determining the number of borings or the depth to which borings are to be advanced. However, we need to have some guidelines in our IS codes as well as the general guidelines for deciding the number of borings and depth of the borings. Preliminary, how will you decide the number of borings? It has been mentioned here in this slide. Conventional wisdom says that the number of borings will increase if soil variability is increases. If load is being increases for more critical and significant structures, number of borings are more. So number of bores will more in such cases where such situation arises. The thumb rule says that in case of the soft soil, generally the spacing between the two bores has been kept as 100 feet to 200 feet. Whereas in case of the harder strata, the may have to be kept up to the 500 feet. It does mean that your boring range is being in the range of 30 to 60 meter in case of the soft soil, whereas it may have to go up to 150 meter in case of the hard strata or the dense strata or the good strata. How many borings will have to go for and for what type of the structures? You may have to deal with the various structures, or if you are a faculty member in the institute, you maybe have some knowledge of the geotechnical investigations. Some of you might be teaching these subjects at your institute too. In such cases, some of the guidelines should have to be with you in terms of the number of borings. The slide which has been shown to you here, it has been taken from the Savars 1979, and he has said that in case of the irregular strata, the spacing between the boring required is less, whereas in case of the uniform strata, the spacing between the boring required is more. So it may have to be happen that in case of the irregular strata, number of borings required are 4 times more than the uniform strata. So you can look into the type of the strata available of the subsurface variability, and based on that, the number of borings are to be decided. How many borings you will have to go for depending on the soil type. Here you do have the poor quality and or erratic qualities. In such cases, you may have to go for one bore in the range of 100 to 300 meters square. Whereas in the high quality and uniform soil means whenever you do have the sound strata, In such cases, even if you go for the one bore in the area of 300 to 1000 meters square, it works good for you. This is about, we are talking about the test bores. How will you decide the number of test bores and what we'll have to do in that? So as per IS 1892, clause 2.3.1, for a compact building site covering an area of 4000 meters square, one borehole or trial pit in each corner and one in center should be adequate. For smaller and less important buildings, even one borehole or trial pit in the center will suffice. You see that this is a square plot area, whereas in this case, this one is the rectangular plot area. In case of the square plot area and rectangular plot area, whenever you have the plan area of around 4000 meters square, if your building is ordinary or very less important, in such cases, one borehole is sufficient. But here it has been shown that this is a square plot area. Its corners are closer to the center, hence number of boreholes required are less. Whereas in case of the rectangular plot area, the corners are away from the center, and hence the number of boreholes are required are more. So you can find that this distance is more. You can find here that the distance is more. Hence, we'll have to go for the more number of boring. Whereas this distance does take care of the plot area, and hence the less number of boreholes may be sufficient. However, in case of the whenever the soil is heterogeneous, where the soil is not homogeneous, in such cases, instead of one borehole, which has to be go for the square plot area, you may have to go for the 3 boreholes instead of one borehole. This has to be increased to 3 boreholes because the soil is heterogeneous. Whereas in case of the rectangular borings, you may have to go for the 5 bores, even if your plot area is around 3000 meters square. However, for ordinary buildings, investigations can be limited to economize in money and time, and 2 test bores may be taken across the site. If highly variable strata are encountered, additional test bores may be taken. So you see that this building is an ordinary one. Investigations can be limited to minimize the economy in terms of the money and time. In such cases, instead of 5 boreholes, here you have to go for 1 or 2 boreholes. But such risk you may take into the conditions whenever you have such situations. Now, what to do when area is to be investigated is large and plant layout is not finalized? The area may be divided into the grid of suitable size and test points taken on grid corners. You see that this is the plot area. This is the larger area. It has been divided into the different grids. You can see. We are finding out the number of grids. The test points are being marked here. In view of the structural layout has been finalized, these test points might have marked in view of wherever the column is heavily loaded or wherever the staircase has to become or wherever the heavy machinery has to come. In view of that, the certain points are being marked for the bore logs for this plot area, and you have to go accordingly the number of boreholes. So this has to be divided into the grids, mark the important points, find its locations, and go for the borings at that particular point. Dr. Yogendra? or Dr.
Yes,
Nirav?
yes, sir. Yes,
So,
sir.
may I going okay?
Yeah, okay, okay. Everything is fine.
Everything is fine in terms of voice, slides,
Yeah, yes, yes, yes.
presentations, everything.
Yes, 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 sir.
Can you see the things what I write with the pen?
Yes, it is visible.
Fine, fine, fine.
Okay.
Okay, fine. For various structures, the number of test points may be considered as under. This is in respect of the type of the structure and number of test boards. The lightweight utility structures like parking sheds, watchman cabin, wherever you do have the structures are not so important. You may go for minimum one test board, or sometimes the trial pit is sufficient. You may not have to go for the entire boring, but even if you go for a trial pit, and then you can decide the depth of the foundation. Whereas some of the guidelines has been shown that for multi-story apartment or multi-story commercial buildings, you must go for at least 5 test bores. 5 test bores are being needed of the appropriate depth in view of the multi-story building or multi-story structures. Whereas in case of the bridges, you must go for at least one test bore at each abutment and each pier locations. So these are some of the guidelines given for the different structures and how many number of test bores you will have to go for the particular site. It has been mentioned here. This we have discussed about how will you decide the number of boreholes. Now we are coming to the depth of the test bore. The depth of test bore should extend up to a point at which the vertical stress due to the proposed structure is equal to or less than 10% of the original effective stress at the point before the structure is constructed. So you need to go up to a depth of the 10% of the original effective stress at the point before the structures. You might have studied about the pressure bulb in your study, right, and isobars things, which has been useful in computation of the foundation settlements. Normally, it should be 1.5 times of the width of the footing. So you are required to go up to 1.5 to 2 times of the width of the footing below the depth of the foundations, particularly whenever all the conditions are in your favor, means in favorable conditions. Whereas in case of the unfavorable conditions, you may have to go for more deeper than 1.5 to 2 times of the width of the foundations. Some of the guidelines are given in some literatures. How will you decide your depth of the borings for the different number of stories and anticipated depth of the foundations? However, it is also depends similarly on the types of the soils. In case of the good soil, you may have to go less deeper, or depth of the exploration is less. Whereas in case of the poor soil, the depth of the exploration is more. S indicates the number of stories and D indicates the anticipated depth of the foundation. If you want to go for a structure of 15 story and you are anticipating your depth of the foundation is 3.5 meter, in such cases, depending on the type of the soil, you can decide how deep you will go for your foundation, for your explorations. Preliminary for how deep you will have to go for bridges. So boring depth is governed by various factors, including foundation type, foundation loads, etc., scouring depth, etc. Generally speaking, 50 feet to 80 feet is reasonable. But however, in addition to this, the electrical experience is useful. The geotechnical consultant, those who are familiar with the particular site, they may take some risk and they may go for the lesser depth. However, the geotechnical consultant, those who are not familiar with a particular site, they may have to go more deeper for the first bore and then they have to adjust. In addition to this, you need to see the nearby structures. When the nearby structures is being constructed and what is the existing condition of the structure, based on that you can have some guidelines for going for the depth of the explorations. Preliminary, we have seen that how many borings and how deep you will go for. Final engineering can be no better than the data upon which it is based. It does indicate that you should have your own data, you should have your own geotechnical report, you should have your own soil investigation report. The soil investigation report is beneficial to you both the ways. If you are referring any of the old report of the nearby structures, you get some more bearing capacity than the previous report. It is beneficial to you and you economize your structures based on the increased bearing capacity which you have been obtained in your report. If you get the bearing capacity values decreased than the earlier report or the old report of the nearby structures, it is also being, I say that, which is minimizing your risk. You are increasing your cost of the structures, but minimizing your risk by make the safe design by taking the less bearing capacity than those who have taken the previous one. So based on that, you should have your own data. You work with your own data. You don't rely on the other data. This has been taken from the George F. Sauer, from the Introductory Soil Mechanics and Foundations and Geotechnical Engineering. So the depth of the exploration at the start of the work may be decided as under, which has been mentioned in IS 1892, isolated spread footing or rock. You will have to go up to a depth of 1.5 times B. Pile and well foundations, you will have to go below the depth of the foundations 1.5 times the diameter of the foundations. For other structures, it has been also mentioned here. How will you decide the depth of the explorations? This we have been discussed about. What is the geotechnical investigations? What are its objectives? What is the sequence of the geotechnical investigation? How will you decide the depth of the exploration? How will you decide the number of borings? Some of the guidelines has been discussed by me here in this lecture to you. Now I'm going to the field test. What are the field tests to be performed in the soil, on the soil, and what are the results obtained from that? And how the results obtained from the field test are to be interpreted for your design, it has to be discussed by me. Yogendra, slide is clearly visible to you?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, fine. So the most widely used method of subsurface investigation is boring holes in the ground and simultaneously conducting the standard penetration test and collecting the undisturbed samples. You may be knowing in geotechnical engineering about the collection of the undisturbed samples as well as correction of the disturbed samples. You may have come across the name standard penetration test many times. Today I am going to discuss to you in detail about the interpretation of the standard penetration test. How the values obtained from the field N value, how it has to be interpreted for the foundation design, it has to be discussed by me today in your class. However, sometimes due to the site constraint, time constraints, importance of the project, erratic subsurface data, or to supplement the data obtained from the test boards, additional field tests are required. You may have been aware of the various field tests to be performed. Some of the name of the field tests performed in the test boards are being mentioned here. This is the standard penetration test, undisturbed sample collection, buoyancy test, for pressure meter test, and permeability test. So applications of the test has been mentioned in the next column of the test which has been written here. These tests are being very useful in conducting at the site, particularly for the different soils and in different situations. However, whenever you are going to collect the undisturbed samplings, you will have to more rely on the area ratio, inside clearance and outside clearance. You are supposed to know the values of this and you need to check your values of this sampler for collecting the undisturbed samplings. We are going to discuss to you here about the standard penetration test interpretations, something about the Venn-Sear test, and here we are going to discuss. Now, what are the tests to be performed in the trial pits? You can also collect the undisturbed samples from the trial pits. You can perform the plate load test on the trial pits. Some of you might not be aware of IS 5249. I request you to refer the IS 5249. I request you to refer the IS 5249, which is a code for determining the dynamic properties of the soil. This code, and particularly it describes the block vibration test and cyclic plate load test for determining the value of the coefficient of elastic uniform compression, CU, which is useful for the machine foundation design. So value of the coefficient of elastic uniform compression can be obtained either by using the block vibration test or by performing the cyclic plate load test, which has been described in the IS 5249. You are familiar with the California bearing ratio, plate load test, and undisturbed sampling, etc. The results obtained from this test is being used for the design purposes. What are the informations obtained from the particular test has been mentioned here, and which test you can perform on the trial pits has been given in this slide. You are well aware of the in situ testing. In situ tests are conducted on or in the soil at the site. The several in situ tests can be used to measure the soil properties that exist in place. So sampler has to be driven inside the borehole and without need to extract the soil sample from the ground and transmit them to a laboratory or field testing. So collection of the sample is being required by driving the sample inside. You may be familiar with these three types of the test. You do have the standard penetration test, which we are going to discuss in the detail here in this class. Cone penetration test, you do have the two cone penetration tests. One is DCPT and another is SCPT. DCPT indicates the dynamic cone penetration test and SCPT indicates the static cone penetration test. Static cone penetration test is particularly useful in the deep foundations. Whenever you are going for particularly the pile foundations, this test is being useful. This test is being useful when you are going for the pile foundations. Venn-Sear test is particularly useful in the sensitive soils or the marine soil or the soft clay. This test is being used for the performing at the site to get the soil properties. Common in situ testing devices, standard penetration test, Venn-Sear test, pressure meter test, CPT test, and dilutometer test. These are the tests which can be performed. Now, what is the standard penetration test and what we do in that? How the results of the standard penetration test can be interpreted, that we are going to see here. The standard penetration test is an in situ penetrometer test carried out in a borehole. So the test is to be conducted in the borehole. This test measures the resistance of the soil against the penetrations undergone. So you are driving the sampler into the soil, into the borehole. And what are the number of boreholes required to drive the sample for the particular thickness of the stratum that we are going to measure here? It is commonly used for testing the sands and gravels. This test is mostly preferable in non-cohesive soils. However, in case of the non-cohesive soil, this is more preferable. However, some of the interpretation has also been obtained by the various researchers for the cohesive soils with the N value. The penetration empirical correlation is derived between the soil properties and penetration resistance N value. This is showing the mind map of the SPT test. This mind map is being, whatever has been shown here may be useful to you many ways. I am going to show one of the sentence in this presentation. The sentence will be that, see that the conventional foundation design, 85 to 90% of the conventional foundation design is consist of the SPT test data. SPT test is giving you the N value. This N value is being correlated with the many of the soil properties. What are its uses? It is useful for the relative density. Sometimes it is defined as RD or ID. Shear strength parameters may be correlated with the C and pi value. Bearing capacity of the soil directly, it can be correlated with QF in some cases, and modulus of elasticity to find out the settlement. These are its uses. SPT corrections, whatever we are getting the observed value in which the two corrections are to be applied. One is the overburden correction and second one is the dilatancy correction. The second one is advantages are relatively a very quick test. It is inexpensive. You can conduct very quickly. Sample collection is possible in the Speedpoon sampler and to find the geotechnical properties easily through the correlations. So this is the most important part of the SPT test, what you can do using this. And this is the major advantage. This is the in situ method most suitable for cohesionless soil, and to determine the geotechnical properties of the cohesionless soil, such as RD, ID, I, etc., can be correlated with the capital N value. Procedure of the test is consist of borehole drilling, assembling the equipments which will be shown to you, penetration testing, and sample collections. SPT correlations are available for the granular soils, that is non-cohesive soil and cohesive soil. And disadvantages of the test are that the disturbed samples are being obtained. You cannot get the undisturbed samples. Continuous soil profile cannot be detected. You need to detect the profile using the test generally at the 1 to 1.5 meter depth, means alternate depth you are taking the same. So you may have to take the data at the 2 meter interval of the 3 meter interval. And less precise results sometimes it gives due to the unskilled laborers. So this is the entire things, what is being shown for the SPT test. And you can understand a lot of things from this mind map which has been shown to you. Dr. Yogendra or Nirav?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. May I going okay?
Yes. Okay, sir.
Will every participants will be comfortable with this?
Yes, sir. It's comfortable.
Okay. Just I am confirming, as this is online, I do not have reactions from the participants. That why I am confirming with you. Thank you, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Yogendra. Thank you.
Doesn't matter, sir. Doesn't matter.
Standard penetration test is being conducted using the 65 kg of the hammer. Sometimes its weight is being written as 63.5 kg. Height of the fall is generally considered to be a 75 centimeter. And this is the road through which we are applying the samples, driving the sampler. This is the Speedpoon sampler in which the soil is being collected. Actually, we are driving it for the three slots of 15 centimeter, but first slot is considered to be an initial seating drive, and whatever number of blows required for the next 300 centimeter, 30 centimeter, that is the 300 mm, the summation of these two is being known as the capital N value or the blow count. Or the N value, it has been known as this. Standard penetration test, we are using the hammer of this weight. Height of the fall is around 75 centimeter. We are driving the sample of 48 inches, that is 45 centimeter. Record number of blows for each 6-inch penetration, that is for each 15 centimeter. SPT blow count is blows for second 6-inch and blows for third 6-inch penetration. So this is known as SPT blow count or the N value. Standard penetration test, mainly for granular soils, may not be reliable in clays. However, sometimes we have to use the data. N value is correlated with the phi value and E value. With phi value indicates that the bearing capacity. With E value indicates the settlement studies. Done with the boreholes at 1.5 meter depth intervals. Samples which we are receiving may be disturbed samples. An area ratio is too large, hence whatever samples are being collected, these samples are the disturbed samples. Standard blue split pool sampler. Here you do have the thick wall of 0.25 inch cylinder. Sampling tube is split along the length, hammered into the ground and hammered into the ground. So this is the split pool sampler in which the soil sample is being collected. This is the diagram of the soil sample conducting the SPT test, which has to be conducted. You can see the entire diagram of conduction of the SPT test. This is a manual method of performance of the SPT test. The test is conducted in a borehole by means of the standard split pool sampler. Once the drilling is done to the desired depth, the drilling tool is removed and the sampler is placed inside the borehole. By means of the drop hammer of 63.5 kg hammer, mass falling through a height of 750 mm at the rate of 35 blows per minute, the sampler is driven into the soil. The number of blows of hammer requires a drive a depth of 150 mm counted. These things has been already discussed to you in the previous slides. Generally, in case of the soil investigations, whatever samples you are collected for the laboratory testing, the samples may be a disturbed sample or the undisturbed samples. Disturbed samples is being used for the mechanical analysis, such as the sieve analysis, hydrometer test, plasticity characteristics, such as liquid limit, plastic limit, shrinkage limit, water content determination, specific gravity determination, and the compaction test and other index properties. So these disturbed samples is being used for these properties of the soil, whereas the undisturbed sample is mainly used for the strength parameter and the compressibility parameters. The undisturbed sampling is being mainly used for these two things. Split pool sampler and below water table, how it has to be collected, it has been mentioned. It should be noted that the standard penetration test is currently most popular and economical means to obtain the subsurface information, both on land and offshore. It is estimated that 85 to 90% of the conventional foundation design is made during the standard penetration test, that is the N value. The N value has been used in correlation for unit weight gamma, relative density dr, internal friction phi, and undrained compressive strength Q. These parameters is particularly for the clay soil, and these two parameters are particularly for the non-cohesive soils. SPT N value corrections. Before the SPT values are used in empirical correlations and in design charts, the field N value have to be corrected as IS 2131-1981. You do have to apply the dilatancy correction as well as the overburden corrections to the N value. Dilatancy corrections is being applied in this ways. where n corrected is being obtained. This NR is the observed value. You apply this to the high latency corrections can be applied. In case of the overburden corrections, either you may apply the Gibbs and Holtz formula or Peck, Hansen and Thurman's formula for getting the n corrected value based on the n recorded values. So this is depending on your overburden pressure, sigma 0, what is the value, and based on that it can be decided. SPDN value has been used in correlations for estimating the unit weight of the soil gamma, relative density dr, angle of shearing resistance phi, unconfined compressive strength Qu, bearing capacity which may be a safe bearing capacity or the allowable carrying capacity, and mainly the stress strain modulus, that is ES. So these are the parameters can be correlated or with the n value which has been listed here. Those who are familiar with the foundation design, they may be knowing that these parameters are enough for design of the foundation. And if geotechnical consultant or the structural consultant have such values, depending on the n value, we can obtain the same. Use of the SPT data is discussed for relative density, angle of shearing resistance phi, and cohesion C. This table is very important for the geotechnical studies. The n value is being correlated with the soil description. This left-hand part has been mentioned here for the cohesionless soil, and right-hand part has been mentioned for the cohesive soil. N value correlations are being mentioned here. Different L values has been listed here in these columns. First column of the cohesionless soil and first column of the cohesive soils. These are the n values. Depending on the n values, what may be the approximate conditions of the non-cohesive soils and cohesive soils in terms of the various parameters has been mentioned. Those who are familiar with the relative density ID or the density index ID, they may be knowing that E maximum minus E upon E maximum minus E minimum is nothing but it is the relative density or the density index. So if your relative density is in the range of 0 to 35, your soil is classified as a loose sand, and angle of internal friction is in the range of 25 to 30. These soils are more susceptible to liquefactions whenever it is a fine saturated sand. These soils above 65 are less susceptible to liquefactions. So relative density can be correlated with the susceptibility of the liquefaction based on the data available or based on the n value available. Angle of internal friction is more important in case of determining the bearing capacity. As we are determining the bearing capacity factors such as NC, NQ, N gamma, etc. from the phi values for determining the bearing capacity of the soil. These are the bearing capacity factors, and hence this phi value is very important in determining the bearing capacity. You may come to know about whether the soil is loose or dense depending on the value of the n. However, you are required to have the proper classification of the soil is being needed. If you do not have the proper classification of the soil and you are correlating your n value with the same, you are misleading the data, or your design will mislead. In such cases, you must have the n value with the soil classification. Soil type should have to be with you with the n value. In general, the one of the equation is there for finding out the value of phi in correlation with the n value. That is phi is equal to 12 into root n plus 15. If you use this equation, you can get the approximate value of the angle of shearing resistance phi, and you keep your end value and you can find out the phi value, and hence depending on the phi value, you can find out the bearing capacity of the foundations. However, if end value stand for cohesionless soil or end value stand for the cohesive soil, the things are different. In such cases, loose sand, the end value 10 may have the bearing capacity around 100 kilonewton per meter square. But whenever you do have the end value 10 in case of the cohesive soil, this soil comes under the steep category, and in such situations, your bearing capacity of the foundations may reach up to 250 kilonewton per meter square. And for these reasons, the classification of the soil should have to be must with you in addition to the end value. Nirav, are you here? Nirav Mravia, are you here? Okay, Yugendra,
Yes, sir.
may I going okay?
Yeah, perfectly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So you do have the correlations with the cohesionless soils. The correlations between the uncorrected values and DR for cohesionless soils suggested as under. The similar thing has been shown to you, whatever had been shown in the last case, with some difference. The phi value, relative density, and compactness of the soil and uncorrected has been mentioned based on the Peck et al. In 1974. You may be aware of the settlement of the foundations. The immediate settlement of the foundation SI is given by QB 1 minus mu square upon ES. So elastic modulus of the soil is important in case of the calculation of the immediate settlement of the foundations. So for the different soils such as the clay, sand, and gravel, and in that also for sub-classification, what may be the approximate value of the Young's modulus you can choose has been mentioned here in this slide. In addition to this, the Poisson's ratio values are also given for the different soils, and depending on the soil types, you can find out preliminary the immediate settlement of the foundations. Common properties of the cohesionless soil has been mentioned here. It is depending on the type of the soils. Can we take the 2 minutes break for a water drinking?
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm taking the 2 minutes break and then I'm coming back to you. Common properties of the cohesionless soils. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So depending on the soil types such as the GW, GP, SW, SP, SM, and ML, you may be knowing about the classification of the coarse grain soil. For classification of the coarse grain soil, you need to perform the soil sieve analysis as well as the plasticity characteristics such as the liquid limit and plastic limit of the soil. Depending on that, the percentage of the gravel and sand, or depending on the fine percentage or fines. Fines are the percentage passing through the 75 micron sieve, and you are getting this classification based on that. The compactness of these soils has been mentioned here. In respect to that, the relative density is being written here. N value has been written here for the particular soils. If you do have the dense gravel, well-graded gravel, its N value is 90, relative density is 75 or more. This indicates that the very good bearing capacity may be up to 350 to 400 kilonewton per meter square. This bearing capacity you can obtain here. However, if this is the situation, your DR is this bearing capacity of the soil may be less than 100 kilonewton per meter square. Similarly, what is the dry unit weight for the particular soil in gram per cc? It has been mentioned. You might have found that this one is the highest dry density which can be obtained in case of the well-graded gravels. Whereas the void ratio is 2 less. Here in this situation, the void ratio is 1 and that is more. And strength in terms of the phi value, if phi is equal to 40 degree, this may have more than 400 kilonewton per meter square too. This indicates that the common properties of the cohesionless soil in respect of the N value has been mentioned here in this chart. Merope has suggested the N60 value, that is for the 60% of the efficiency, depending on the overburden pressure and relative density. How you can find out the N60? Depending on the N60, you can find out the phi value, that is the, also you do have the another relations for N60, that is phi dash. This is the relationship between the phi and N value. You can observe here earlier we have seen that the angle of internal friction is 40 and its phi value is coming out to the standard penetration resistance is coming out to be nearly 50. This comes under the category of the dense to very dense sand. And if you do have this range of the angle of internal friction, it comes under the loose or very loose sand. So this is the relation between the phi and N value, which has been given in IS 6403. The ultimate net bearing capacity shall be calculated. You are familiar with the Terzaghi's bearing capacity equation. CNC plus gamma D NQ plus 0.5 gamma B N gamma. These are the extension of that only, considering the shape factor, depth factor, inclination of load factor, etc. W dash is the position of effect of the position of the water table has been there in the bearing capacity calculation. As we have been discussed that this test is mainly useful for the cohesionless soils. However, its use is also there for determining the unconfined compressive strength QU. Unconfined compressive strength is particularly performed in case of the pure clay. You are familiar with the Morse Coulomb law. Tau is equal to C plus sigma minus U tan phi. And you are also familiar with sigma 1 is equal to sigma 3 n pi plus 2c root n pi. where n pi is equal to 10 square 45 plus pi by 2. This part is known to you. In case of the unconfined strength, whatever sigma 3 we are applying, it is 0, which is not confined. And we do have the sigma 1 is equal to 2c root n pi. Phi, here in our case, the phi is 0 for pure clay. So this value has to be 1. 10 square 45 is 1. So sigma 1 is equal to 2c. And by that way, Q is equal to 2c. So cohesion can be obtained by Qu by 2. So once you obtain the cohesion, you can apply the Scampton's equation of the bearing capacity in general, C and C, Q and F, where you can add the shape factors 1 plus 0.2 BIL, 1 plus 0.2 D by B. And likewise, you can use these equations of the Scampton's, put the value of C, and find out the bearing capacity of the foundations. Here you do have the N60 values. You do have the undrained cohesion C. What will be the consistency of the soil? And while going for the visual identification or obtaining the sample at the site, how will you check the same soil has been mentioned here. So for different values of this one, 0 to 2, Cu value is this, and likewise it has been mentioned. Whenever you do have the very steep soil or a steep soil, your consistency index of the soil IC is 1 or more than that. You can check it. IC is being determined by WL minus W upon IP. You can determine accordingly. Now you do have the next slide is the how you are correlating the Cu value with the N value. It has been mentioned. Cu value with the OCR with the N value, how it has been correlated, it has been mentioned. Correlations of SPT with CPT. We'll have to discuss something on the cone penetration test. Cone penetration test is particularly useful in case of the deep foundations. We are measuring the frictional resistance and end bearing using this test. So how do you correlate the value of the CPT test, which you are obtaining the QC, that is the cone resistance, with the N value? It has been mentioned here. It is 0.4 times in MPa, and QC value is being correlated here. And that's why how this soil you can be correlated with the N corrected, it has been also mentioned. In case of the static cone penetration test, we are using the mechanical cone or other cones. This is the cone arrangement. Tapered sleeve to eliminate the cone friction and keep out of the gap formed when cone is pushed or pushing separately measures the skin resistance developed. Mainly we do have to measure the skin resistance and end bearing using the same. This is the field arrangement. You can apply this truck mounted equipments or so. This is CPT truck. This test is being performed here. We are measuring the cone resistance QC and sleeve resistance FSC. This is also known as the frictional resistance. Typical CPT data has been shown here. While going for measuring the side, using the side friction and penetration resistance, you are getting this. However, but the drawback of this test is that even though if you are having these values, you should have the Borlaug presentations. If you are having Borlaug, you can come to know about the type of the soil and you can interpret the results. Here you do have the use of the SPT test data. Frictional ratio is frictional force divided by the end bearing. This is the cone bearing. Based on that, these values, you can come to know what are your soil strata and you can interpret your results. So soil strata can be found out from the different zones depending the value of the bearings has been found out. Vensia test, specially suited for the soft and sensitive clays. Quick test, used to determine the undrained shear strength. The sensitive clays are those clays, whenever you are measuring the the soil strength in case of the undisturbed samples and the remolded samples, whatever ratio you are getting, based on that you are, based on that you are going to get your sensitivity. If sensitivity is more than 4 or this ratio is coming out to be more than 4, soil is known as the sensitive soil. This is a very quick test and it is used to determine the undrained shear strength. When shear test is to be performed in the borehole, drill a test hole, insert this van in it, rotate the head, measure the torque at which the soil fails, and relate the resistance to the soil to the shear strength. So this is one of the methods to find out the shear strength of the soil in case of the sensitive soil or soft clays or the marine soils. Comparison of the in situ test methods, simplicity and ruggedness, ease of testing, resolutions better, basis for interpretations, types of soils, equipments of availability, and potential for future. So whatever in situ testing methods you do have, you can compare these methods your own for your site for the points which has been mentioned here. These 7 points are being mentioned here. You can look into your comparison and you decide to go for the methods. Groundwater monitoring is must in computing the bearing capacity. Groundwater level must be determined during the geotechnical exploration or the soil investigation. Measure at the time of drilling and later 24 hours and 1 week, etc. And can be accomplished by leaving the selected soil borings open or install a piezometers. So groundwater table position has to be determined based on the ground level. SPT automatic trip hammer, whenever you have to go for the deeper depth, this type of equipment is being needed for the explorations at the site. You can see the picture of such equipments. CPT versus SPT has been compared here. Advantages over CPT of SPT are that provides the much better resolution and reliability, versatility, poor water pressure, dynamic soil properties, etc. can be measured in case of the CPT test. Whereas disadvantages of this test are such that does not give a sample, will not work with a soil with rock, gravel, and need to mobilize a special rig. Heavy equipments are being needed in performing the CPT test or particularly the SCPT test, hence you need to go or check such requirements. Field CBR is very important in case of the pavement design, particularly in case of the flexible pavement design. The value of the CBR test, which can be conducted in the field or laboratory, is being needed. California bearing ratio is to be determined, and based on that, which evaluates the strength of the subgrade and basis for the roads and runway pavements. This is a guiding parameter for design of the flexible pavements too. Many of you might be knowing about the procedure of the CBR test and significance of the test. This is the performance of the CBR test at the site. As we are talking on the soil investigations, you may have some knowledge of the plate load test. Plate load test has to be conducted as per IS 1888, which has to be used for determination of the ultimate bearing capacity of soil in place, which assume that the soil strata is reasonably uniform. The method is applicable when the soil strata is reasonably uniform and also used to find out the modulus of subgrade reactions. Limitations of the test is that test results reflect only the character of the soil located within the depth of which less than twice the width of the bearing plate. Since the foundations are generally larger than test plates, the settlement and shear resistance will depend on the properties of a much thicker stratum. So here the size of, you need to compare the size of the plate as well as the size of the foundations. Size of the foundations is 5 times greater than the plate, and size of the foundations is 1 minute. I have to receive one call. 1 minute. Hello. Chicken. હું યાજ્ઞિકના પપ્પા બોલું છું. પેલું છે ને યાજ્ઞિક તારો મોબાઈલ ચાલુ જ છે ને? કેટલા કલાકનું છે ટ્રાવેલિંગ? Okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir.
May I audible to you also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry. I had to receive one important call, so I had to take 2 minutes break. It's okay now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the plate load test is particularly suitable in case of the uniform soils. This is the performance of the plate load test, how it has to be performed at the site. Whenever you are going for the geotechnical investigations at the site, you need to balance the cost and risk both. So you are required to balance the cost and risk. The scope of a subsurface exploration for any particular site is a difficult problem which is closely linked with the relative cost of the investigation and the project for which it is undertaken. So you need to look into the types of the projects. You need to look into the budget. You need to look into both cost and risk. For very important project, you can not take any risk. For ordinary projects, you can take some risk and you can minimize the cost. Now you are familiar with the various laboratory tests too. You may be knowing about the various laboratory tests which has been mentioned here. Moisture content, unit weight, sieve analysis, Atterberg limits, compaction, hydraulic conductivity, consolidation, direct shear, triaxial test, and unconfined compression. So these are the laboratory tests which can be conducted at the laboratory for the different samples. You may be aware of this test. Whatever test we are doing in the laboratory and whatever the soil mechanics you have been studied, you know that in the first chapter you have studied the weight volume relationships, in which you have been studied the moisture content, density. Density may have been studied in the different form, such as the bulk density, dry density, saturated density, submerged density, etc., porosity, void ratio, and specific gravity. Classification and in-volume relationships, classification and pressure computation, parameters used to represent the relative volume of solids in given volume of soil mass, and volume computations. Plasticity characteristics are the liquid limit, plastic limit, liquidity index, consistency index, shrinkage index, and activity number. So you know that these limits are very important in classification of the soil, in identifying whether the soil is swelling or not, soil is expansive or not. Depending on the mineralogy, the activity number is being found out, which is the percentage of the particle less than 2 micron upon IP. What will be the field behavior of the soil? It can be judged based on this value. We are finding out the different soil indices depending on the soil plasticity characteristics, and you can judge the degree of firmness of the cohesive soils or the fine grained soils using the plasticity characteristics. Gradation characteristics are the effective diameter D10, classification, permeability, filter design, percentage grain size D15, 30, D50, 60, 85, classification and filter design. So uniformity coefficient, you are aware of this D60 upon D10. You are finding out from the particle size distribution curve. Coefficient of the curvature CC is equivalent to D30 square upon D10 into D60. Based on this, you are classifying whether soil is well graded or poorly graded. You are finding out the classification of the soil based on these results of U and CC. Consolidation characteristics are important in determination of the magnitude of the settlement and time rate settlement. Magnitude of the settlement can be determined using the compression index CC or coefficient of the volume change. Using the combination of CC and CR, we are finding out the magnitude of the settlement. Whereas for determination of the time rate settlement, we are required to find out the coefficient of the consolidation CV. How long will it take to settle? It has to be determined from the value of the coefficient of the consolidation. MV value is particularly useful for the over-consolidated soil, and these values are particularly useful for the normally consolidated soil. CV value is for the time rate settlement. You are knowing about the square root time fitting method or log time fitting method from which the CV value is being obtained, and hence the time rate settlement or time required for the foundation of the settlement is being found out. સાંજે આવું વાંધો નહીં ક્લાસમાં છું અત્યારે પછી તમને Here you do have the square root time fitting method and log time fitting method. Strength characteristics are very important in determining the shear parameters. You are having the good knowledge of the cohesion and angle of internal friction. The test to be carried out for the same. Unconfined compressive strength as discussed just now. These results are particularly useful in the analysis of the stability of slopes, earth pressures, load carrying capacity based on the strength. So these are the major areas where the strength characteristics are being used in the foundation design. The block count SPT number, we have already discussed in the detail about that in its correlationships or empirical relations for the different properties. This N value is useful in the phi value is useful in determining the NC, NQ, and N phi, N gamma, and hence we can determining the bearing capacity. Sensitivity SC can be determined by the strength in the undisturbed condition divided by the strength in the remolded conditions. Characteristics of the compacted soil is being needed in case of the earthwork. Wherever you are required to find out the optimum moisture content and maximum dry density, you need to find out the relative compaction. You need to check your relative compaction at the site based on the values obtained from the laboratory. So these values are very important in case of the earthwork. Scope for the informations, log of boring, soil test boring records you are keeping, test pit records you are keeping. Data included in the borings are the field data as well as the laboratory data. Your sounding tests are there. You do have the dynamic cone penetration test, static cone penetration test, electrical resistivity, etc. Some of the laboratory tests, which are the field dry density, field moisture content, particle size distribution, you are very familiar with this all. Consistency limits, where you are determining the liquid limit and plastic limit of the soil, and you are finding out the various soil indices. Shrinkage limit also. You are classifying the soil on the basis of the A-line chart. This is known as the A-line chart or the Casagrande's A-line for classification of the fine grain soil. These fine grain soils are being divided into the three types: low, high, and medium compressibility. If indicates the C, that is the cohesive soil. If indicates the M, then it is the silty soil. Specific gravity has to be determined in the laboratory and CPI parameters. This is the triaxial compression test results can be used. Sigma 1 is equal to sigma 3 n pi plus 2c root n pi. You can apply for number of samples tested, and hence you can get the C and pi value. Swelling parameters are on the basis of the plasticity characteristic of the soil. In addition to this, free soil index and swelling pressure test has to be known to us. Now in determining the SPC based on the shear criteria, or that is you do have the two options, general shear failure and local shear failure. You may be familiar with these two types of the failures, in which soil it occurs and how the data is to be interpreted for finding out the bearing capacity in case of the general shear failure and local shear failure. In case of the general shear failure, we are taking the full parameters of C and phi, whereas in case of the local shear failure, we are using the dash parameters in case of the C and phi for finding out the bearing capacity. In case of the extension as per the IS code IS 6403, you do have these are the bearing capacity equations. This is considered to be a shape factor, depth factor, and inclination of the load factor. And you do have the water table correction factors too. As shown to you earlier, you do have the water table correction factors too. So here you are going to find out the depth factors, shape factors on the basis of the value of B and L and type shape of the base, such as the continuous strip footing, rectangular footing, or circular footing. How will you consider the shape factor? It has been shown here. As far as the depth factors are concerned, DC is equal to these values and inclination of the factors. Alpha is that inclination of the load with the vertical, that is alpha. Effect of the water table has been calculated on the basis of its position below the base of the footing as well as below the 1.5 times the width of the footing. These values are being computed. This is about the Borlaug presentation. Whatever we have been discussed here, here you do have this is the first part of the Borlaug. This is the first part of the Borlaug. In continuation of this, the second part of the Borlaug is there. This first part of the Borlaug indicates the field data. Field data includes the depth up to which the exploration has been done. What is the visual inspection of the soil? Then what is the soil types depending on the classification, which has been obtained on the basis of the grain size analysis and plasticity characteristics, groundwater table position, thickness of the stratum, where from which depth which samples has been collected. You have disturbed samples, undisturbed samples, and standard penetration test numbers. You can find out here the depth in meter. These are the end values at the particular depth. These are the end values at the particular depth. So whatever part has been shown here, it is a field part. And you need to write the number of borings, locations, type of boring, water table, date started, date completed, groundwater surface level, and diameter of borings, etc. And this is the second part of the borehole. Mainly is consist of the laboratory results. In this part, you do have the grain size distribution, you do have the Atterberg limits, IS classifications, shear parameters, consolidation characteristics in case of the saturated clay soil, the expansive soilness parameters, and the OMC and MDD and depth in meter. So at which depth, what are the laboratory parameters? It has been mentioned here in this. And based on the results obtained and laboratory and field data which has been correlated, the value of the RCC isolated footing for different size, the depth in meter at particular depth, the shape bearing capacity is being computed. Here the shape bearing capacity is being computed. I'm also going to show you how to compute the allowable bearing pressure and what is the difference between the shape bearing capacity and allowable bearing pressure. So shape bearing computation, you may be knowing, many of you are familiar with that. You might have done a lot of work in that, or you might have taught to your students too. The conclusion of this is that Information regarding type of the structure and total loads coming on the foundation should be given to the agency carrying out the geotechnical investigation so that the depth of the exploration may be modified during the course of investigations. If sufficient bearing capacity is not available at the required depth or estimated depth, number of test bores should be adequate to get a horizontal distance as well as the vertical profile of the subsoil strata. For each strata encountered, the following data should be available: N value, bulk density, natural water content, shear parameters, consolidation parameters, swelling parameters, and classification of the soil. Undisturbed samples and SPT should be staggered in test bores. If SPT is conducted at 1 meter depth in test bore BH1, then undisturbed samples shall be collected at a 1 meter depth in test bore BH2 and so forth. So allowable bearing pressure has been computed. Here how it has to be computed, that I am going to show you in the last part of the presentation. I am going to finish in time. This one is the last part of the presentation, that is the computation of the allowable bearing pressure. May I going okay, Dr. Yogendra?
Sir, perfectly okay, sir. No issue.
Okay, fine, Parikshit, fine.
Thank you, sir.
So how to calculate the allowable bearing pressure? Allowable bearing pressure is a net loading intensity at which soil neither fails in shear nor there is an excessive settlement detrimental to the structure. So in industrial building in central India, 3-story structures, types of the foundation is raft, size of the foundation is 12 meter by 7.5 meter, and depth of the foundation is 1.5 meter. Soil investigation bore log is given in the data where soil types have been mentioned here: CL, MLCL, SM, CL, and SM. This is the low plastic clay and silt, silty sand, low plastic clay and silty sand. So here this is the position of the groundwater table which has been given. Shear parameters are given in terms of the C and phi at the different depth. Influence zone as talked to you, it is the 1.5 times the width of the foundation. Here the width of the foundation is 7.5 meter. Hence the influence zone is 11.25 meter. In this zone, this is a silty sand. The SPT tests are being conducted, and these are the values of the SPT at the different depth. You can find it. The undisturbed sample have been collected here as this is the clay soil. The undisturbed sampling is being possible, and hence this is the bore log detail which has been given to us. In addition to this, some other details are also given. Influence zone below the foundation level is 7.5 into 1.5, which has been shown to you. It has been 11.25 meter. Groundwater table is 5.5 meter below the ground level, which is also shown to you. Whenever you refer the strata in terms of CL, MLCL, etc., this is the thickness of the stratum which has been listed here in this slide. The equation is 3 ton per meter square and phi is 8 degree. Specific gravity is 2.765 and water content is 8.675. The compression index is also given in the data, that is 0.11, and E value is being computed as 0.656. So the void ratio value is found to be 0.656 here in this case. Bearing capacity factors are to be computed from the phi values. The value of NC, NQ, and N gamma are being netted. In case of obtaining the dash parameters, you do have to reduce the parameters accordingly by taking phi dash is equal to tan inverse 0.67 tan phi. Method of analysis based on the relative density, but our case is this. In our case, the void ratio is in the range of 0.50 to 0.75, as our void ratio is found out as 0.656. So we are required the interpolation of the results. We are required the interpolation of the results obtained in computing the parameters such as NC, NQ, and N gamma. First, the shape factors has been taken using this table as shown in the IS code. Depending on your type of the foundation, our case is of the rectangular foundations. Depth factors have been computed using the D and B value, and you have to check your value of the phi, range of the phi value. Our case is not of the inclination of loading, hence the alpha is equal to 0. That's why in our case, IC is equal to IQ is equal to I gamma is equal to 1. Now, bearing capacity factors have been computed here. If our case would have been pure general shear failure, you could have been taken this value. If our case would have been pure local shear failure, you could have been taken these values. However, our case is not of the general shear failure or not of the local shear failure. That's why these results are being interpolated. This 0.094 has come from 0.75 minus 0.656 for the void ratio difference, and this 0.2 has been come from 0.75 minus 0.55. So these values have been come from and it has been interpolated, and values of the NC, NQ, and N gamma, the value of the interpolated values have been found as NC is equal to 7.09, NQ is equal to 1.86, and N gamma is equal to 0.70. Now, in case of the general shear, local shear failure or general shear failure, we are taking E0 is equal to 0.656. This is the case of the intermediate positions. Taking this, keeping the values in the equations, you are getting that the net ultimate bearing capacity is being obtained as 25.34 kiloton per meter square. With a factor of safety 2.5, it has to become as QS is equal to 10.14 ton per meter square. So here you are very well knowing about determination of the safe bearing capacity. But as I talked to you, we are going to discuss about the allowable bearing pressure and how it is to be determined. And because this takes only care of the shear failure does not occur. Shear failure does not occur if you are taking this value in the consideration. But what to do for the consideration of the settlement and how it is being considered, that is the important part of this presentation, which I am taking in the last few minutes. Settlement computation criteria, you might have studied the different methods in the topic of the stress distribution of soil. A load placed on a soil mass causes a stress changes within the soil below. The stress distribution sigma z due to a concentrated load Q on the soil surface can be computed using Gaussian equation sigma z is equal to Q upon z square upon 3 upon 2 pi. This equation, you are familiar with this. Numeric chart is the another method for computation of the stress distribution, and influence factor is another method for computation of the stress distribution. In our study, we are using the influence factor for computation of the stress distribution and settlement of the foundation. So settlement computation table in terms of the influence factor, where you are required to get the value of M and value of N. Value of M is nothing but it is equal to 2Z by B, and value of N is nothing but it is equal to L by B. Z is the center of the thickness of the stratum from the ground. B is the width of the foundation, L is length of the foundations. Likewise, Whatever values you are going to get here, for L by B is equal to 2 and M is equal to 1.2, you may have 0.727 likewise. So this table is being used for taking the stress distribution computation. Now stress distribution curve for our bore log has been drawn here. Depending on the overburden pressure, this line is showing the existing overburden pressure line. This line which has been drawn here, it is the existing overburden pressure line. This bore log has been divided into the different layers, such as layer number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the 6 layers. The influence zone is this 11.25 meter. Depth of the water table is 1.5 meter, which has been mentioned from the ground level. And these are the various layers which has been given in this bore log. So excessive stress intensity computation delta P is to be done at the center of the clay stratum, looking to the Z values. So for the first layer, your Z value is 0.5. For the second layer, you may have the Z value different because you have to reach to the thickness of the stratum. This is the width of the foundation, and hence this one is the M value. So the influence factor is being found out as 0.991 for the first case, and hence the incremental stress at the center of the flush stratum has been computed, which is multiplied with the SPC, and this has been computed, and it is found out as 10.05 ton per meter square. So incremental stress is being computed here in terms of delta P1, and it is found out as 10.05 ton per meter square. Similarly, we have 6 or 7 layers, and for each layer, by finding out such incremental stress, the values of the settlement is being computed. As you know that this incremental stress has to be used in determining the consolidation settlement HCC upon 1 plus C0 log 10 sigma 0 plus delta sigma upon sigma 0. So this is nothing but whatever we have been found here, that is delta P1. Similarly, for the each layer, you will have to compute such settlement wherever the clay layers are there, and you may have to make the summation of the each layers, settlement of the each layers, and you are going to find out the settlement of the foundations. Delta P at the center of the second strip. This is the center of the second strip. Delta P, this distance is 2 meter. And so you have 2 meter, 2 into 2 meter divided by 7.5. L by B is here. I0 is found out as 0.936, and incremental stress has been found out as 0.949. As discussed to you earlier, we are going to include the incremental stress in computation of the settlement of the foundation. You do have the S1 is equal to 41 mm, S2 is equal to 57.3 mm, and S3 is equal to 36.1 mm. This equation has been used, and settlement is computed for the 3 layers, and settlement of the 3 layers have been found out here in this way. But in this fourth layer is a sand layer. Fourth layer is a sand layer. So in case of the sand layer, we are required to compute the settlement of the foundation using the N value. N value we are having, based on the N value, we are computing the settlement of this layer, and N corrected has been found out. This value is being 15, P is 7.5 meter. The water table affects the ground at this particular thickness, and these are the incremental stress at the different layers as has been shown to you. This is corrections for water table. How do you consider the correction of the water table, taking the D by V value and position of the water table W dash, which you need to take into the consideration, and you will have to find out the water table correction factor as per IS 8099. Considering these all are the important graphs which has been given in IS 8009. Depending on the standard penetration test, how settlement per unit area can be expressed, it has been mentioned here. So you can find out the settlement. You have to also include the depth factor and rigidity factor in your computation and effect of the same. So I are required to include the effects of both depth factor and rigidity factor. Depending on the dimensions D, B, L, etc., these factors are to be found out as per IS 8009 part 1. So here you can find that the settlement of the each layer has been computed. Total settlement of the foundation is found out as 160 mm. However, considering the rigidity factor and depth factor and multiplying with these values, this settlement is found to be 123 mm. Now you see that the important part of this presentation is that I wanted to explain to you is that how the settlement, allowable settlement has to be considered in the foundation design. So allowable settlement in case of the rough foundation is 100 mm. Allowable settlement in foundation in clay is 100 mm. Here our actual settlement coming out is to be 123 mm. If we keep the 123 mm, the bearing capacity is 10.14 ton per meter square. But if you have to restrict it to the 100 mm, your bearing capacity can be reduced. So for 100 mm of settlement in case of the raft, which is allowable for the foundation design, this value is reduced to 8.2 ton per meter square. I wanted to convey to you is that how to consider the allowable bearing pressure and how to consider the effect of the total settlement of the foundations in design of the foundations. I've been used these references for these presentations. I am thankful to you for all for your patience listening. I hope that I have finished everything in time. Thank you all for your patience listening and your attendance. Thank you. I once again thank organizers of the event, Professor K.B. Parikh, Dr. Yogendra Tandal, and faculty members of this institute. Thank you.
Participants, if you have any question, they can write in the chat box, so we can discuss with sir.
Hello, all the participants. As Tandil sir has instructed, if you have any kind of queries, please write in chat box or in WhatsApp group. We will ask the questions on the behalf of you, as we did up to 3 days constantly. And I'm thankful to Solanki sir to give a precious time, constantly speaking on the topic of this. I'm thankful to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh. Thank you for inviting me. It is my pleasure to meet you all on this platform.
So this is the one of the platform that we can meet us very easily, sir. Is it right, sir?
Yes. Dr. Parikh, I assume that I have finished everything in time.
Yes, definitely, sir. In well, it was very good. You have managed everything, sir.
And presentation might have been useful to the participants too.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. So it is kindly requested send the PDF of the PPT so that we can share the same thing to the
I will
participants.
send the PDF of the same to you.
No okay, problem. Sir. Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
So just 1 minute. Let us wait for at least 1 minute so that if some participants wants to ask any questions, we can ask them, sir. Only for 1 minute.
Okay. I am not able to read chat anywhere. I could not see option in my.
Maybe, sir. Not an issue, sir. We will ask on the behalf of the participant. We can ask the questions to you, sir.
No problem.
So there is no questions from the participant in the chat box as well as in WhatsApp group. So finally, on the behalf of the participants, on the behalf of the Government Engineering College Dahod, on behalf of the Applied Mechanics Department, I am thankful to you to spare your precious time and give the valuable knowledge to us. And it really that we have gained the knowledge from this particular aspect of it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, now you may
Thank you.
relieve.
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Okay, sir. You may relieve, sir, from this one.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Now, all the participants, it is kindly requested that that we have a last session today at 3:30 to 5:30, which will be taken care by Professor L.B. Umravia, sir. So that will be till a break for half an hour. There is one also another instruction, which is an important instruction, that tomorrow is the last day. And as per the schedule which has been received, that is the instructions or the guidelines from the AICTE Atal, there are two sessions will be there. The first session, which is of specifically a technical one, and the second session, which is on the stress, effectiveness of stress mental side, or maybe it is on the yoga. Like that, there will be one session additional. Is that is the second session, and the last, that is the thing. But our final validatory portion that will be conducted within 10 to 15 minutes. Now, there are certain instructions which has been given or guidelines given by the AICTE. As per that, we have to arrange one quiz. That quiz, which has been MCQ type of the 50 questions, which will be floated tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, Dr. Tandale sir, he will put this link on the WhatsApp group. As per your conveniency, we will fill it out, so that after completion of the second lecture, or after completion of the valedictory, I can get marks. Your presence is there with me, so that presence and marks I have to upload on the AICTE Atal portal. Along with that, tomorrow there will be a feedback form link. The particular will be pop up in your Atal login. I don't have to give you any kind of feedback form. The feedback has to be taken care by the AICTE Atal. So you have to open that one. You have to fill it out. So the three different procedures has to follow. I have to enter the presence. I have to enter the marks, and you have to go for the feedback form. If the three has been done, then within the 24 hours working, maybe the extremely 2 days, your certificate will be generated. In these circumstances, if you have any doubt, we have a WhatsApp group. Till the faculty fraternity, till the participant get a certificate, we will keep this WhatsApp group remain as it is, so that if you have any kind of query related to certificate, you can raise to us and we can solve our best over here. Right? Thank you. We will meet at 3:30 today.